Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the New Democrats podcast. It's great to be back with you. This show, I have on a new friend, Owen Higgins. He's a journalist, historian, and author of the book that, if you're watching, you can see over his shoulder, called Owned: How Tech Billionaires on the Right Bought the Loudest Voices on the Left. It's a fascinating critique of figures like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and how they've had this surprisingly effective impact with some famous journalists that I've followed for years. Names like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi. So we're gonna cover a lot of that, but just a couple more plugs for Owen. He's a former staff writer at Common Dreams, and now on Substack has a big following on the Flashpoint, which is where you can follow him and see how he speaks about things like politics, tech, and media ethics. Owen, welcome to the show. Before we just dive into the headlines, we're going to cover things like one big, beautiful bill, Elon's role in it, and then his response to it. I also want to talk about, man, there's just all these interesting headlines in the last 2 or 3 days of the Epstein files and Trump like ending up funding Ukraine, and now Doge impact and these crazy floods. So we're gonna follow that thread. But let's start it off with, when did you first start following Elon? And before our show, you said something interesting, which is like, it's not as much necessarily that he's changed that dramatically, but dear heavens, his public image has. So maybe just give me like Owen's history of Elon Musk and how you've experienced him.
Yeah, I think I was probably just aware of Elon in the way that a lot of people outside of Silicon Valley were aware of him before 5 or 6 years ago, really. I kind of knew of him as this billionaire guy who presented himself as pretty liberal and said that he was going to be, kind of said he was going to be the savior for green energy. And, he would pop up in the headlines every once in a while saying things that I agreed with. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Like I'm generally aware of who this guy is. I think it was the Thai cave rescue when I really kind of became aware of who he really is. When he was talking about how he wanted to put the submarine that he was going to build in like a week or something, and was told basically that's impossible, we don't want your help, and reacted poorly to that. And I think that's kind of like when I really got a sense of him. After that, I didn't pay a ton of attention to him, though. I mean, I didn't really see him as a particularly interesting character for the work that I was doing at the time, which was like much more just politically focused, until 2020 with COVID, which I think is when, like, as you were saying, right, when his public persona changed, I think, to the right. And that was so noticeable that at that point it was just really impossible to ignore what was going on.
Yeah, that is, I think, instructive, and probably everyone else's. Like, yeah, more than 5 years ago, he just kind of blended in of like another smart Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg, and yeah, the last 5 years has been
Yeah. I mean,
distinguished.
I would say that his image was suffering some damage. Like, he was suffering some reputational damage before that. But that it was only kind of like after that it really became apparent that this guy wasn't who he had presented himself as for like a long, long time. And that also that who he really was much more kind of in line with the Republican Party, I guess, like the right wing, and just kind of his general affect. And then the more that we got to know about him, we were like, oh wow, like you're much further to the right. And then it's kind of a question of, again, like we were saying before, right? His public persona, he had always kind of been like this. I did a lot of research for this book and found that, he had always kind of had these conservative politics, but he had never really been like totally open with them. And I think his politics were relatively fluid. But then, once COVID hit, that's really when you see him kind of make this public shift to the right, where I think that he actually starts to really believe in politics, and the politics that he's believing in are pretty far conservative.
Yeah, that is, that one I resonate with. Just in my community in California, it's like, obviously kind of characterized pretty liberal state, and yet COVID had this unspoken, dare I call it, like radicalization a lot of friends in Silicon Valley. So Elon totally typifies that. Let me ask one more question before we get into the headlines, which is, because you've spent all this time researching for the book, connect the dots for me, maybe just for Elon, or if you want to throw in like Peter Thiel, who a lot of the listeners like know pretty darn well, how they have shaped basically media, or at a smaller level, like journalism.
Whew. That's a big question.
That's your entire book. I know.
Yeah. I'll try and answer it in a couple of different ways, and I'll ask you to kind of maybe react to each one of them. I think that the first thing I'll say, that people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen and David Sachs as well, right? Like, these are kind of the four heavy hitters who I profile in the book. They've had a huge impact on the media, and especially the kind of right-wing alternative media ecosystem that they have used to promote their own goals and their interests, and also to promote an ideology that they actually really believe in, which is this kind of like conservative tech utopianism, which I'm sure that your audience will get what I'm saying there. And so they have put a lot of money into this in a way that is just really uniquely Silicon Valley, which is this ethos of move fast and break things. This idea that you just kind of throw a bunch of money at the problem, and then like whatever is the best or the most effective idea will rise to the top, right? And look, of course, this isn't like what happens like every time, like they put their thumb on the scale like everybody does. But I'm saying that this is the general ethos that they are putting forward, right? And I think that in that context, their intervention in media needs to be seen that way. That they just threw a bunch of money at all of these different alternative media projects and platforms, and just kind of wanted to see like which ones would work.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. And it's so interesting how you describe it, that's like the patented venture capital model, right? You got a big bucket of money and you pick 20 projects that are all kind of high risk. You don't expect all of them to be home runs, but you love the gamble of it. That
is totally it. That is totally what they're doing. I've tried to explain this a lot to people who aren't necessarily in this world, and I'm glad that you get it, because, and I'm not saying that people don't get it, but there's a certain level of understanding, I think, when you either like, write about tech a lot, or you're in the tech industry, like if you're in the tech world in any kind of way, you're very familiar with this ideology and with this idea. But I would say that there's also like a level of kind of pettiness that drives some of their like interventions in journalism, right? So for a long time, these tech guys really enjoyed this kind of interplay between them and tech journalism, where tech journalism was kind of fawning and really just kind of would do whatever they were told. And then over time, that changed. Obviously, it wasn't always like that universally, but most of it was. It started to change, and then you had them getting angry about it. Gawker, Peter Thiel killing Gawker is a perfect example of this. I would say that Mark Andreessen, personally, like getting angrier and angrier at journalists over the past decade. Musk, the way that Musk treats journalists today. All of these guys have their own problems. Thiel, back in the 90s, when he was in college, didn't like the college newspaper and founded his own newspaper then. So his idea of like wanting to change journalism is long standing, is long lasting. So if you kind of take like what we just talked about with like the VC approach of just kind of throwing all of this good money after bad, because it doesn't matter, you're just trying to hit on one, and taking that approach to media, and just think about that as, and then kind of add to that this feeling of personal betrayal and anger over the way that reporting and journalism had been, and then you kind of have like a good idea of what of the kind of competing ideas that are driving this forward.
I feel like each of those threads, it's fascinating. Being in Silicon Valley, I still hadn't been totally privy to, honestly, some of the like interpersonally petty response. Because like in the podcast, Peter Thiel sounds like a super smart, confident, level-headed, kind of calm, cool, and collected type of practitioner. And then I haven't looked this up in a long time, but you helped me like retell the Peter Thiel. This is like 15, 20 years ago. Gawker, which is like, I'll even let you describe who, like, but just a news outlet that what I understood is they were the ones that like published the expose that Peter Thiel's gay, which now like in the Valley is super well known. And that somehow that pissed him off so much that when Hulk Hogan was suing them about a totally separate issue, like 5, 10 years later, he funded the lawsuit exclusively with the aim of bankrupting the news outlet that he was pissed at 5, 10 years earlier. Like, whoa, that is wild.
Yeah, he stays mad for a long time, right? And I think that just to kind of really tell the story of Gawker very quickly is Gawker had this blog called Valleywag, which kind of treated Silicon Valley like Us Weekly would, right? It was like a gossip blog about the tech world. And they wrote about Thiel a lot, and they were very critical of him and his right-wing beliefs and his attachments to all these different like racist ideologies, and he didn't care for that. Like that's not good reputationally, and it also like made him look unhinged. And I think that was probably more what it was. I don't think he has a problem with people saying you're a conservative or you have like some beliefs that we find repellent. But I think that if you start to say that he's unhinged, that makes him. I think that makes him more angry. And so when Valleywag outed him, it wasn't a huge expose, but their justification for it was to say, hey, this is an open secret in the Valley, so like we're not really like outing him. I personally, obviously, I'm not like a fan of any of these guys. However, I don't think that's an excuse to out somebody, and I don't think that is. I'm not super crazy about that happening. But
totally.
But they did do that, and he got mad at them. But then yes, he did fund Hulk Hogan's lawsuit. But here is the last interesting thread here, just to connect it back to what we're just talking about. He's having dinner with this guy named Charles Johnson, this far right agitator, and Charles Johnson figures out that he has funded the Hulk Hogan lawsuit. But it's more than that. It's that Thiel has been funding tons of lawsuits against Gawker. Tons of them. He had been putting money behind all these different attempts to sue them. Just like that. He flooded the zone with money. He was throwing good money after bad. He was trying to find the one that would work, and then the Hulk Hogan one worked because they venue shopped it. This is like, just kind of complicated legal jargon, I guess, but they basically found they got it to Florida where they knew that they would get like the best possible hearing from a judge, and then they did, and then they bankrupted. But the reason that Gawker was bankrupted by this wasn't the initial judgment. It was that after that, all these other characters, some of whom I assume had been funded by Thiel, some probably not. Then they smelled blood, and they all started suing them. They all started bringing them. They all started bringing their lawsuits. I believe in like this quarter, they venue shopped it. This is people like. The guy who said that he invented email, I can't remember his name right now, but from Massachusetts, and Charles Johnson, I think, was another one. All of these people who had been
slighted at some
attacked
point
by Gawker, or and often for good reason, but said, oh no, I'm gonna sue you, and that's how they realized that they couldn't stay financially viable and fight all of these different lawsuits.
Oh my gosh. It's so intriguing. So let me try to connect a couple of these threads. This is going to be a little bit of a jump, but we're talking Silicon Valley. Like these are kind of the old guard now. Like these guys are 50, 60. They've been making money for 30, 40 years. Like I was a kid when they were first making big waves. And some of these points, yes, super high IQ. But I want to just keep holding on to that thread of like, hey, it gets petty. It gets personal quick. Once the ego is scarred, it don't heal quick, which now let's just jump right into, over the last 15 years, have always loved reading everything Mark Andreessen put out, just in tech. Like I honestly didn't even know about his politics. But I'm like, man, that guy's blogging 10, 15 years ago was prolific in the Valley. That's how a lot of guys learned. I'm like, dude, I just read everything he wrote. I looked up to Elon kind of just because everybody did. And therefore, the COVID, post-COVID, like podcasting, everyone started just taking these big steps to the right. And then I remember myself and some of my peers that are just more moderate, we're like, all of them are coming out for Trump. But the thing that we were talking about 2 years ago, like when it wasn't even certain that Trump was going to get the Republican nomination, was, did the tech billionaires fit in the coalition? Like there seems like there's a lot of friction that's going to occur if Trump or any from the MAGA base wins. I could list all of the reasons, but let's just jump straight to where we are today, July 9th, when we're recording. Is it has been barely, not even 6 weeks since Elon ended his official duties at Doge, which let's all remember, he got the award. What did he get? Like a key to the White House, or like that's super honorable. They're hugging each other. Everyone's happy-go-lucky. Within a week of that, Elon starts coming after the big beautiful bill. Primarily, there's a handful of issues. You could make the case for like, oh, they're going to slash EV credits. That hurts Tesla stock. But ultimately, if you look at all of Elon's posting, it's stuff that I actually agree with, which is, wait a sec. Our platform, what Trump had been posting for years, is we can't keep ballooning the deficit. And what the big beautiful bill does, when you boil it all down, is during Trump's administration, during these 4 years, they're going to give upwards of $4 billion of tax cuts, where over half goes to the top 5% of Americans. And then they're saying we're going to pay for it by slashing medical care for the poor, but that's going to happen on somebody else's watch. That's going to happen long after the Trump administration's gone. So all this does is just pile on to the deficit. And last thing, and then I want to hand it off to you, Owen, is here's just, I pulled together some of these quotes, some of Elon's tweets that just show like, whoa, the man just spent perhaps $300 million electing Trump 6 months ago. And he's saying things like, this bill is a disgusting abomination. It's outrageous. Shame on you who voted for it. And then 2 days later, he says, time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. This is the reason they haven't been made public. And then a day after that, Musk reposting someone else on X saying Trump should be impeached and replaced by J.D. Vance. And then back to this interpersonal pettiness. He says, without me, Trump would have lost the election in the first place. There's no, like, such ingratitude. So we just have this crazy moment we're in this week where all of my friends in Silicon Valley, to be totally honest, they're just confused. They're like, wait a sec. We knew Elon was the king of Silicon Valley, but he's having this really dramatic, kind of like, reality show breakup with the guy he just elected. Like, I don't even know whose side I'm on. That's what a lot of my friends are saying. So I guess my question first to you, Owen, is, are you surprised? And not even long-term. Like, how do you see this playing out just over the next weeks and months?
Yeah, so first I would say I'm not surprised at all that this relationship has broken down. These are two men with massive egos who weren't going to be able to be in the same space for a long time. Also, Musk is terminally insecure and like driven by that, I think, more than anything else. And I think that also Musk has a very high level of self-regard, especially for his own intelligence that isn't backed up by reality. I don't think he is particularly smart. I think he's been very lucky with a lot of his investments, but I think that he's a good showman. I think he's good at getting attention, but I don't think that when it comes down to like making decisions, business decisions, that he's very sharp on that. I'll give an example, and I'll go all the way back to 2000. Peter Thiel has left PayPal. Elon Musk is in charge of PayPal. PayPal already, this is in 2000, already is used as a verb. I'll PayPal you something is already a verb globally. That is the kind of advertising that you cannot, it's
Yeah, it's priceless.
You can't. Yeah, you can't. Like, it's priceless. You cannot pay for that. Musk wants to get rid of the PayPal thing and call it X, the everything app. And it's a terrible idea today. It's a way worse idea then, because then X.com is just going to get flagged by everything for being porn, basically. This is 2000. Remember, like, this is like, not really. I guess not the Stone Age compared to now, but it's definitely like the Bronze Age, probably. You know, like, it's almost, if you look at like through like archive of web pages back then, it doesn't look like anything that you really recognize. So they wait until he goes on honeymoon. He's out of the country. They depose him. They put Thiel back in charge. Thiel's obviously like, this is a terrible idea. So what I'm trying to say is that Musk's instincts have always been bad. When it like his kind of core id instincts, he's good at bluster. He's good at takeovers. He's good at making money. But when it comes to like actually having like creative ideas to drive something or to make something like a bigger and better product, he just kind of tends to fail. And the reason that I bring that up in this context is that here the product is Trump. Here the investment is Trump. And instead of just like letting it go, like, I mean, they got rid of him because he's massively unpopular. The more that the public gets to know Elon Musk, the more they dislike him. The more his face is out there, the less people like him. It's just like he doesn't have that level of charisma, especially now that Trump has. And Trump, who I also don't think is a particularly intelligent person, but he is very, very socially intelligent. And he knows that stuff, and he's not going to be tied to you if you're not going to help him. The minute that you're not going to help him anymore, he's going to ditch you. And that's exactly what he did here. So that's a long way around of saying, like, this was always kind of inevitable because of their egos, and it was always kind of inevitable that that it was going to be Trump that was going to kind of break it off with Elon. What I don't think was inevitable has been Elon's reaction. Right. Elon's reaction to being kind of ditched by Trump, I really think it shows that he completely overestimated his level of public support politically and his level of power within the White House to his huge detriment. You'll note, like, so he said that stuff about Epstein. The minute that he said that, I was like, this is over. Like, there's no going back. You can't go back from that. You can't call someone a pedophile who's the president of the United States and expect that, like, you guys are going to be friends again. Like, that's not possible. It's just not possible. So he does this. I'm like, well, that's got to be it. But the minute that he backs down is because Trump's like, okay, well, I'm going to start to look at your contracts. And that's like what percent of Elon's business right now depends on federal contracts. It's got to be a majority, right? I mean, it's huge. Like he really depends on this. I that was the reason when I was watching, I just did not understand what he was doing. I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, this is like, this guy can make you not rich. Or, well, he can't make you not rich, but he can make you, he can shave $100 million off of your net worth on paper. Like, that's not nothing. What are you doing? But he just kept doing it because he doesn't have the impulse control. He doesn't have anyone around him anymore, I think, to tell him no.
Correct. Oh, I know. It is almost Shakespearean that when folks with this kind of power and wealth then surround themselves with loyalists, sycophants, who just prop up and like fan the flame of their ego, they just get so unhinged. And it's two of them in the same room. I'm like, of course, this is a chemical reaction just waiting to blow up.
Right. And when did Elon do well with Trump? When he was flattering Trump, when he was telling Trump he was great. Yeah. Then the minute that he starts to push back, I mean, but even before he got kicked out of the White House, which I think had probably been in the works for a little while, but even before that happened, like, he was starting to say stuff about this bill, about ballooning the deficit. And Trump's reaction to this, I think, was just like, can I curse on here?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, his reaction was really just like, go fuck yourself. Like I don't have to. I don't have to have you around. You
I
already
already won
got
the
me in the
election.
White
I
House.
don't need
Yeah,
your
I already
money
won the
anymore.
election. Yeah, I don't need you anymore. So I think that it just needs to kind of be understood that way. As far as the bill itself and like ballooning the deficit, I mean, I I'm skeptical that Musk actually cares about that. I think that what he care I think what he cares I think he cares about it in the context of he realizes that if you continue to balloon the deficit, eventually there are no more entitlements you can cut, and eventually taxes have to go up on the rich. I think that a lot of his actions should be understood with that kind of like lizard
Selfish
brain.
overlay. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. And look, this is just like the way that I mean, here for a change, right after the last 5 minutes, I'm actually not picking on Elon specifically. I'm just saying that, like, most people in industry are like that. No matter what the industry, they don't want to pay more in taxes. They want to take as much profit as they can, and so they are going to pursue political solutions that avoid that. But I think that Musk probably is able to see that a bill like this bill that just passed is the kind of thing that makes it more likely that eventually the taxes have to go up, because you can't, like, it just slaps so much stuff and it's just too much. But I think it's that, and I think it's also the EV subsidy stuff that is no longer in. I think those are the two kind of motivating factors. I tend to find most of what motivates these guys, whether it's Musk, Thiel, Andreessen Sachs, whoever, tends to be money, material. But it just does. Like, that's just what they're interested in. That's what they've devoted their lives to. That's what they do. They're businessmen. So I feel like you can't really go wrong kind of projecting their behavior through that.
I know that's that last sentence of, like, if you want the cipher, if you want the like treasure map to know where they're going to go next, it's actually kind of simple. But here's where I think I am completely in a place of, like, just hypothesizing, which is, wait, where did these Silicon Valley billionaires go? Because I can kind of steel man the case of, all right, they're gonna come back to Trump. They're gonna push Elon to kiss and make up. Like, it's like he he blew up a month ago. Tesla stock tanked 14%, $150 billion in 2 days.
Yeah.
And then I've heard leaks of, like, whether it's JD Vance or Susie Wiles, chief of staff, sent him the little kind of covert note saying, you gotta apologize, man. Like, this is your own undoing. He does his best. Still a poor apology. And then 2 weeks later, he does the exact same thing again. And the stock is right back to where it was when it crashed the first time. So he's double dipped in these, like, self-emulating just mistakes. So I'm so curious. I'm like, Elon, geez, if there's one thing we've all learned, the guy's emotionally, mentally volatile. So I don't even know what to predict other than more volatility. But I think because I've spent a lot of time in, like, David Sachs's wider circle, I don't know, he doesn't know me. Yeah, but know a lot about him. The guy seems pretty cerebral and less emotionally driven. And Mark Andreessen, I couldn't even, he seems that way. At least that's like the air that they try to carry themselves with. So I can see them, if given the binary choice, Zohran Mamdani and AOC are going to take over the Democratic Party, which I think is what the right's going to say, versus kiss the ring again to Trump and the MAGA base. It's way in their best interest to do the latter. So I think I don't know what to expect. And then enter, and now this is the next question I want to ask you, which is like, geez, how do we look in the crystal ball when Elon Musk 4 days ago posts to however many followers he has, like 200 million. Should I create a new political party that actually represents the 80% in the middle? He had Mark Cuban endorse it. Like, it went pretty far on Twitter or X. So now you overlay, like, oh my gosh, that just made the playing field even more complicated. So, Owen, what do you think? I'm like, does that actually have any kind of legs?
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there. I just want to go back to Elon just to because you said emotionally volatile. I think that Trump won't accept Musk's apology unless Musk prostrates himself
Yeah.
and humiliates himself. Musk will never humiliate himself because of the level of his insecurity and also his ego. Like these two kind of competing things. Like it's just not that's not going to happen. Um, and so I don't think this is going to get resolved permanently at any point in the future. So I just wanted to say that because I feel like that's kind of an important thing to say. It's like kind of like so you're like, well, when you said like 20 minutes ago, hey, it's been like 6 weeks. I was like, man, it's been six. Like that's it. Feels like 2 years. Like it feels like forever. So somebody like Sachs, someone like Andreessen. Well, Sachs, I think, is more ideologically committed to the kind of like right wing politics that Musk and Thiel are. I think Andreessen is too, but he's not as public about it. Yeah, he does talk about it, but not in the same way. I mean, you can get a sense of like what these guys believe very easily, but you have to kind of look for it a little bit. Not like Musk is like blasting out to, as you said, like 200 million followers. As for what they'll do, I think that they are all in on Trump and the Republicans now. I think that's where they're going to be for the foreseeable future. But much like Thiel during the Obama years, when Thiel was outright, very, very forthright with saying this guy's a communist, had no problem working with the Obama administration to make money, had no problem contracting with them, he had no problem taking the federal government's money. Same with all of these guys during the Bush or the Biden administration. They had no problem taking his money, even as they were, or not his money, but the federal government's money under a Democratic president. They don't have a problem with that. So again, I think that this stuff does need to be seen in that way, that it is an expression of their interest to continue to work with Trump and this Make America Great Again Republican Party, or the Republican Party in general, I think. This is just what they want ideologically, but if the Democrats win, say AOC is like the next president, we have like a huge left-wing takeover of the Democratic Party and they win in a landslide. I think that these guys won't be happy, but there's no way that they won't like try and find ways to contract with the government. Even so, they're not going to be like, oh, okay, well now that this has happened, it's the same thing with Mamdani in New York. When honestly he wins in November, you're not going to see like a capital flight from New York. You're not going to see people who have put all of their money into like making New York City like their home base. They're not going to leave. So they're very adaptable. Are they going to fight against these guys the entire way? Absolutely. But when it comes down to actual business decisions, they will work their hardest, I think, to maintain these relationships. And this is just, I mean, I don't need to tell you this. You're a businessman. You know this. Like, this is just the way it is. Like, ideology is one thing. Politics is one thing. But when it comes down to the bottom dollar, like you're going to work for that. Right? I mean, so.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways you can rationalize it too. It's like, yeah, I've got a team, I've got stakeholders, I've got a fiduciary responsibility. Like, I'm sure these guys are eloquent when they need to be. So if the left-wing Democrat storms through the country, they're going to have an eloquent explanation of
they will find a reason. Yeah, totally. They will totally
Save
find a reason.
and
Yeah. And they will spend the 4 years, say, of President AOC or whoever, pushing to reverse the policies and to get a Republican in 4 years, but they'll still work with it's kind of like when people are like, you have to grow up. You have to like look at the world like realistically. Like that's kind of the way that I feel about this when I see people taking seriously people like Bill Ackman saying that he's going to like, or not that he actually has not said that he will leave New York, saying that other people should leave New York. It's like, come on, exactly. Man. Like this isn't going to happen. Like try and be realistic about this. So I think that's it. I think they're all kind of fluid in their politics to an extent. I think Musk may have gone a little too far to be able to walk it back, but and Thiel and Sachs have never made any secret about how far to the right they are. But again, that's their politics. That's not their business. And these two things have to be separated and to be able to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I'm going to stay on this vein of now, like looking forward to the midterms and the presidential election around what happens to the MAGA base when we just talked about the Silicon Valley, like kind of potential realignment, TBD. And then just this week, what are two more headlines that have the MAGA Twitter warriors up in arms? The first being, it's like, hey, who are the leaders of the FBI? Kash Patel, Doug Bongiorno, however you say it.
Dan Bongino or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. What that guy's name? All these podcasters, the AG, Pam Bondi, like these folks built reputations around conspiracy theories, central of which was the Epstein files. J.D. Vance trafficked in those theories like for a long time. So for the biggest benefactors of that conspiracy to then be the mouthpiece of Donald Trump saying it never existed, for me is comical, but for the committed base, it's unthinkable. And then in the exact same week that everyone's up in arms, flipping out, half the people on Twitter I like kind of try to keep track of are saying we gotta stay committed to Trump. Like they make up kind of all these gymnastics, contortion-y answers for why. While that's happening,
Yeah, totally.
Trump comes out and let me just read these quotes because for me, I'm like, golly, this is just unthinkable. Trump says, Ukraine has to be able to defend themselves. We want to put defensive weapons in because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. I'm not happy with Putin. We've been putting up with a lot of baloney, BS by Putin. And if you want to know the truth, he's nice all the time, but it turns out that's meaningless. My end, who I've followed Putin for 15 years, spent a lot of time in Europe and the Middle East where Putin has done a lot of morally consistent and egregious things. So I'm like, oh, great. We woke up to it. Like, that's a great news. But the MAGA base says, what about no more wars? What about no more of our arms getting shipped off to foreign conflicts? So now the MAGA base is losing their minds about two existential issues at once. The conspiracy theories, are they not real, or they're so deep that Trump had to support the deep state? And we're doing another war, and we're funding more weapons to foreign countries. So Owen, what the heck does that just do to the MAGA base? Are they going to bounce back in 2 weeks? Or are these the kinds of cleavages that Democrats can actually wiggle into and expose when it matters at the next two election cycles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how much advantage Democrats can take. Democrats are facing their own fissures, especially off of Gaza and the war there, and Biden's support for that. Not really so much Ukraine, and so I think that any kind of division that might happen on the right over Ukraine, I don't know how much the Democrats will be able to take advantage of because they're still working to clean up their own house with what's going on there. But I would say that if anyone in the MAGA base thought that Trump was committed to peace in Ukraine and not to be hostile toward Russia, I mean, they didn't pay attention the first term. He sanctioned Russia. He armed Ukraine before they were invaded in Biden's term. Trump put in place a lot of the infrastructure that existed to create the conditions for the war in Ukraine popping off in the way and when it did. I'm not saying I'm not excusing the invasion here. I'm just saying that Trump's actions with Ukraine, arming Ukraine, etc., were consistent with what Biden ended up doing when Biden came into office, and then Russia did invade Ukraine. At no point, I think, even when Trump was out of office did he say that it was good that Russia invaded Ukraine. There's a trope among liberals that Trump is owned by Russia and he does everything that Russia wants. But if you actually look at like his behavior, he's relatively hostile toward them. I think he personally likes Putin, but I think that as far as like his policies towards Russia, the country, he sees them as a competitor, and so he wants to crush them. So I say so that's kind of my take on that. I think that it's a little surprising that he's going all the way back in just because he doesn't generally like to spend money on that kind of stuff. Like that would be my surprise. But as far as ideologically, he's certainly pushed forward a lot of anti-Russian stuff in his first term. So this is not particularly surprising to me that he would do that. So that's the foreign policy thing. Now to talk about the fun stuff. As far as Epstein goes, right? Like, so Trump is named in like one of these lawsuits. Okay, Trump has been videoed and photographed with Epstein multiple times. Musk, there's a famous photo of Musk with Ghislaine Maxwell. Which always made me like why is he bringing attention to this? If I were him, I would not want to bring attention to it at all. But so I think that their approach to this by saying there were no files and releasing that video and stuff like that, I don't really know like what the motivation was behind it. They had to know that this would just inspire more anger. And when they gave the dossiers, like the files to those influencers, nothing in there was new. It was stuff that had actually been reported by the website Gawker back in the day, right? Like that, like the Epstein list had been reported by them. So none of this stuff was particularly new. They did release that video, which apparently there's a minute. I haven't really like followed this stuff like super closely over the last couple of days, but apparently there's a minute missing. That's what they were asking him about, and they're saying that there are no files or whatever. When maybe, I mean, I don't know. Like I don't really have a dog in the fight either way. But to the extent that maybe the files did exist and maybe he didn't share them for whatever reason, is national security or something like that. I mean, the rumors have always been that he's in there, that Clinton is in there, that Bill Richardson's dead, but the Bill Richardson was in there. Like a lot of these powerful people. Who knows? Who knows what the thing is? It's not something that I find particularly compelling in general. It's just not something that I really have followed too closely. Other than I think everybody else in the country who's just like, wow, this is crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I think it ultimately, your question came down to, is it going to be possible for his base to come back to him? And I think to me, the answer is yes, because they like him. He's the natural outcome of the last 40 plus years of the Republican Party. This is what they've always all been kind of moving toward. He's what the evangelical wing has always wanted. Because, not to go too deep into history nerd stuff, but if you look at like the beginning of the evangelical movement, it's really all about segregation. It's not about abortion or anything. They want to keep their schools segregated. So like, Trump is like the perfect expression of this. And I just don't see them leaving him behind. And that's, I think, also why it's kind of interesting that the tech guys kind of latched onto him. I think that they kind of embrace some of this social stuff that maybe they didn't agree with at some point, although I think they're all kind of going in that direction now. But like Peter Thiel is like talking about like religious crusades and like just talking about things in very like interesting terms, I guess would be like the charitable way to say it. That's not something that he was saying, 10 years ago, not publicly anyway. And so I wonder, like, one interesting thing, I can't remember who it was that I talked to for the book, but they said that, Musk and Thiel and Andreessen specifically had all been radicalized by the platforms that they that they invested in or own,
Correct.
and
Correct.
that they had just been kind of like spiraled out by this program that they had created. And it's just such an interesting way of thinking about it to me, to say that like yeah, like they had that is kind of what happened.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, I'm so with you. I think the reflection just in this week, Epstein files, Ukraine aid. I can the Democrats seize those exact topics? Eh, doubtful. But the piece that I am super intrigued and hopeful for is that it just continues to point a total spotlight at the MAGA base is so diverse. And the only unifying factor is, call it what it is, a cult of personality around Donald J. Trump. And therefore, unless all of a sudden JD Vance gets real charismatic and super impressive and all of his jokes start landing and he, like has this little glow up, I just don't see the base in any world staying nearly as knit together when they have so many competing interests and so many like tension points that it's I would actually argue it's one of the harder coalitions to hold together. Um, and when I look
I
at even the kind of the bench beyond JD Vance, I'm like, is it Doug Burgum or Scott Bassett? And I'm like, those guys are pretty boring old white dudes who have $1 billion each. Like, I don't see them being able to speak to the working class in the steel belt or the rust belts. Like, I just hope that frays with time. But what do you think?
I think that I've thought about this a lot, especially since last November, right? I think that in order for Democrats to win again, they need to adopt a populist message. They need to say, "Hey, things are not great. Here's how we're going to fix them."
Yeah, correct, correct.
Trump won in 2016 and 2024 because he was the person who was saying, "Actually, your life is bad. Actually, things are not good. I'm acknowledging that. Now, I'm acknowledging it and I'm saying that the problem is because of these people over here, and I'm feeding you lies about how you could possibly fix it through me, right? Obviously. But he's still acknowledging that there's a problem. I think that's also why he lost in 2020, because the problem was him. So if you're he can't fight against the system by acknowledging, oh, this is, but he didn't offer anything. And Democrats, I think, are in a unique moment here where they can actually offer people things. They can say, hey, we're going to fix things. We're going to do this. We're going to offer these plans. Make them simple, make them accessible, acknowledge that there's a problem. Just like, I think one of the reasons that Harris did so poorly, relatively. I mean, I do want to say Harris did better than Biden would have done, and given the amount of time she had, she did probably about as well as she could with the campaign that she ran. I'm not going to digress into that whole discussion, but there are obviously, I'm sure that you've read the books about this. There are books out about it. But Harris would not allow herself, or Biden would not allow her, or whatever, to say, actually, yeah, things weren't like perfect over the past 4 years. There were a lot of problems. Here's how I'm going to fix them. Biden was like, no daylight. You have to just say you're going to continue the way things were. And Trump was like, that's great. That's great that
Give me
you're
an
doing
opening.
that. Yeah, because things suck. And so like, you know, and bring it back to me and I'll make him good. And, you know, so I think Democrats can get a lot of, to go back to your original question and point here, I think Democrats can get a lot of this coalition back. They just have to offer people something. They have to offer them something, and they have to show them that they are understanding of
They're
who,
listening.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they're listening and that they understand who the enemy is. Like, and I'm not saying that they need to demonize people. I'm not saying that they need to like attack people. I'm saying that they need to acknowledge that there is a huge amount of inequality in this country, and that there is it's if you are under a certain income bracket, things are very difficult for you in this country. They really are, and I think that people often, especially in the white collar sector, whether it's writing, whether it's tech, right, can lose sight of that. They can lose sight of how many people in this country do not make a lot of money and have to struggle to deal with all of these bureaucracies, and they have to fight to get anything. And that's a lot of people in this country. And I think that you just need to be able to talk to them and help them to and acknowledge that things are not going so well. I think that was Trump's victory plan, and I think the Democrats can really do this, but they need to be able to commit to it. They need to say, "Hey, we're going to really do it."
Hmm. Oh, I'm so with you. I could do an hour on that topic, but we got 10 minutes left. So let me bring up the last one that's in the headlines a whole lot. We're recording Wednesday. At this point, it's like, oh, it's so tragic that these floods in Texas, it's estimated at least 100 lives were lost. And then you add that it's this, oh, I'm like seeing the footage of this girls' summer camp that's already, it's like 27, maybe 30 lives lost. Like just tragic. So full stop. I'm like, oh, I've got my first baby girl. Oh, the moment I connect those dots, I'm like, I could cry for the next 10 minutes. But if we get back to like, at the end of the day, there were political mistakes made that led to destruction and loss of life, like is often the case. So here's some of the stuff that I'm reading, which is Doge, Elon Musk, cut 20% of staff of both the National Weather Service, which are the exact ones supposed to raise the alarm, and FEMA, the Federal Emergency, what would it be? MA, whatever, something assistance.
Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Management, that's the word. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Another 20%. And there's so many different ways that you can analyze this, but I think the first one is like, okay, by cutting payroll, government payroll, it's like 1, maybe 2% of the whole government budget. People, salaries. By cutting these salaries, the biggest estimate is that he saved $60 million. And that the damage from this one isolated, like relatively small natural disaster, $20 billion in damage. 60 million to 20 billion. I know it's hard. It's like on my brain. What is that? It's like that's for every dollar he tries to save, we're gonna have to spend $330 on the mistakes. Yeah. 330. And then let me just the last one that's just so painful is that on the Republican side, whether it's Carolyn Levitt or some of the spokesmen for the Trump admin, they're saying, natural disaster, they happen. I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of reasons they happen. Climate change is a big one, which we can get into those numbers. But just in this one case, not even getting into climate change, the local Care County judge and the Texas Emergency Management Chief said that there were critical roles that were supposed to sound the alarm. And all that happened is they estimated 3 inches of rain. The highest estimate was 8 inches, and there were 20 inches that fell that night that led to loss of life. They didn't have the correct reporting, and they didn't get the word out because people were fired by Doge. There's no way around it. So I think that it's just another one of like, I want to see our fiscal deficit like come in under control. But let's be clear here. We saved $1 firing all these people, and we're about to spend $330 on this one natural disaster. Something's off. Something's super off.
I think that. So setting aside, I think obviously as a parent, like the stuff from tech is brutal. It's brutal.
So brutal.
As you're saying, yeah. But let's set aside like the morality here. For a like the morality of people's deaths, just for a second, because I just want to make a point that doesn't have emotion tied to it really quickly, which is to say, what you're saying about 60 million versus 20 billion for this one disaster, is I think a very effective message, because it just shows like how haphazard and stupid this whole thing is. Like, this approach to governing just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You're managing a budget that is just dwarfs anything on the planet. Anything like the U.S. government budget dwarfs anything on the planet. So, like, let's be real here. You know, like how much is this stuff going to cost? And I'm not saying that the money should take precedence over life at all, right? I'm not saying that at all. What I'm trying to say is that even by the standards that they hold themselves to, this is a complete disaster. Even setting aside that stuff, just by like the numbers, is just a total disaster. So I think that that's a strong point. I think that, unfortunately, on social media, I think some liberals have not done their side a very good service by doing this kind of partisan sniping at Texas and being like, oh, well, you know, like that's what happens. That stuff is annoying and should be called out when it's seen. But, you know, it's not a lot of people. And the reason I bring that up is because Elon's little Nazi chatbot yesterday was like using that as a reason to say some pretty horrific stuff. And, you know, but the reason that I bring that up, right, is just to say that a lot of the time it can seem like social media and online is real life, right? It can really seem like it's real life. But I think for regular users of Twitter are maybe 18% of the country, maybe. And of those, the ones who are commenting on politics are an even smaller amount. And the ones who are commenting on politics from a left perspective are even smaller. And so these are echo chambers that this stuff is being said in. And I think that works to the right too. I think a lot of the time people perceive like Trump voters, right? Because we were talking about the coalition, right? You're talking about the coalition is so diverse and so many different people, and they vote for him for a lot of different reasons. They have a lot of different social beliefs. A lot of them don't agree with a lot of the things that he's doing. But I think that a lot of people who are like super online and super connected to politics, they think that every single Trump voter and Trump supporter is like the most rabidly psychopathic Twitter commenter that you see on there, who's just saying things like Trump is Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and so I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but those are kind of my thoughts about this whole thing. And again, those are my thoughts setting aside like the loss of life, which is just like unbearably tragic. And to the extent that this was avoidable, it's avoidable, like you were saying. There could have been warnings put out. Like, there could have been, and you know what? If somebody wants to say that there weren't ways that it could have been prevented or stopped, hey, great, have a congressional investigation and prove it, right? Because I'm totally fine. Like, hey, if this was unavoidable, I have no problem swallowing my words and taking back what I just said. But totally. If it wasn't, then, you know, if it was avoidable, then, you know, like let's. But either way, let's have hearings and investigations. But of course, they won't do that, and we all know why. Or at least until the next election, which I imagine will swing pretty heavily to the Democrats.
Yeah. Well, so I think it is one of these topics that as a like Democrat trying to go after the swing voter. I think these are the kinds of topics. So it's like, man, you should continue to barrel forward when Trump admin says, so sorry, the Doge cuts, we fired all the people that could have saved 100 lives. And then they're like, whoa. Here's all the proof. You're wrong. I'm calling that bluff. And now let's keep going on. What else in this big, beautiful bill that you just had your Rose Lawn White House party as Donald Trump signed in literally on July 4th last week? What were some of the seminal features of that bill? Gutting investment into any kind of energy that actually makes the world not burn up. We continue to spend something like $20 billion on subsidies to the oil and gas sector. And yet we just gutted all the of the potential investment credits just to spur new jobs in renewables and nuclear. So it's like, okay, well, that's partisan, sure. And we're gutting the actual ability at FEMA to respond to these crises. And now, if we really want to get into this, when Reagan first started, a lot of these policy sets, because you go back, Eisenhower, Nixon, these were actually pretty intelligent climate thinkers and activists. So 40 years ago, when this whole rigmarole took a wrong turn, 1980s, guess how many billion-dollar disasters there were in the U.S. per year? 2 or 3. It's like 2 or 3. And this is on like kind of inflation adjusted. So kind of the bar is the same. 2 or 3. By the 90s, it's 5 to 10. 10 years ago, it was all of a sudden we were hitting 20 of these billion-dollar natural disasters a year. Last year, 28.
Yeah.
From 2 or 3 to 28 multi-billion-dollar natural disasters in a generation. Like, those are just the moment any
staggering numbers.
Signed, the moment anyone behind the big beautiful bill tries to argue this, it's one of these moments where I'm like, Democrats, sick them. Just take them down. Go for the jugular. We don't have time to waste. It's egregious. We are self-sabotaging at every juncture, and the stakes couldn't be higher.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, I think it comes down to what we were talking about before when we were just saying that, you just have to have a simple message and put it forward. Yeah. And like you're saying, just call out who the bad guys are. It's very simple. Just stick with that. Just go.
Yeah. Oh, whew. Okay. Well, now I'm like taking my shoes off because I'm sweating over here. Owen, you told me that you have, I think you said like your son's baseball game right now.
No, my baseball game.
What's even better? It's yours. Okay, great. Yes, well, in that case, we can't have you be late. I'm going to wrap quick. Normally I do a longer wrap, but just a reminder to all the listeners, Owen, buy his book, Owned. Follow him on Substack. It's the Flashpoint newsletter, right?
It is. Yep.
Flashpoint. Any other places they can follow you?
You can find me on social media, but buy my book, please, and
buy the book.
That's the main plug.
Exactly. Owen Higgins. All right, folks. Another episode down of the New Democrats. See y'all next week.